Masechet Nedarim, Daf Pei Aleph. We begin with some fascinating agadah. It's related to the Bioseh in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah was wondering what is called inui nefesh, affliction, such that a husband can annul his wife's vow if it causes her some major affliction. We saw machloket. Tanakama says if she says, I'm not going to bathe, then that's called an affliction, and the husband can annul it. The Bioseh, however, said, not bathing is not an affliction, right? Some people don't mind not bathing. Just ask little kids. They hate taking a shower, taking a bath. And therefore, the Bioseh says, has a higher bar. He says, only if she says, I'm not going to eat any fruit, that's called an affliction. But bathing is not an affliction. We wondered, because there's a contradiction. The Bioseh also said that if you have limited water, and my city we have water that we're going to use for laundry, and in your city you don't even have enough water to drink, I don't have to share my water with you, because having clean clothing, laundry, is just as important as life itself. And that's how important it is. So that we wondered, how could it be say that having clean laundry is so important, or trumps other people's lives, but not washing yourself, that's not a big deal? And we answered, yes, in fact, he does say that. If a person doesn't bathe, they'll get boils and sores, but they can get better from that. On the other hand, if someone has unclean clothing, that leads to madness, and that is much worse. All right, that's where we left off, and so we're going to pick up on the same theme. Shalchu mitam, hizaharu be'arbubita, hizaharu bechabura, hizaharu bibnei aniyim, shemehen teseh Torah, shenemar yizal ma'im medaliyav, shemehen teseh Torah. So from Eretz Yisrael, I sent a message to Bavel with some advice. You should be careful regarding arbubita, grime, right? That's what we said. Arbubita, if it's on the head, if it's on the clothing, it leads to madness. So dirt is very bad. Be careful with that. Also, be careful with the company that you associate with yourself. Make sure you're hanging around good people that will be a good influence. Another interpretation is that make sure that when you learn Torah, learn it with company. Don't learn on your own. Go get a chevra, a bunch of people to learn together. And also, be careful of the sons of poor people, because Torah will come forth from them. We learned this from Pasuk that says, Yizal ma'im medaliyav, which literally means that water will flow from its wells in buckets. Deli is a bucket, or from its branches, and referring to, this is the blessings of Bil'am. So it could be literally water, but we interpret it here as midal. Dal means a poor person. That poor people, they end up often being the greatest sages. Torah comes from them, perhaps because they don't spend time dealing with material things, so they appreciate and focus more on intellectual, spiritual matters, and so they often end up becoming the great sages. Therefore, be careful with them. Give them respect. Give them the support that they need. Now, since we brought up the topic of who becomes future sages, we said often it comes from the poor. We wonder how come often Torah scholars, their children are not Torah scholars. Sometimes they are, but often they're not. Why not? Amar Rav Yosef, Shelo yomeru Torah Yerusha hi lahem. Rav Yosef says this is on purpose. It's directed from heaven, so that people will not say that the Torah is an inheritance. Torah belongs to everyone. It's a meritocracy. Anyone who wants to come and learn can learn, and it doesn't matter whether their father or their grandfather was the greatest rabbi. Everybody has to earn it on their own. So if it went in succession, like a monarchy, they say, oh, this is their thing. They get the Torah. It's like Kohanim. But no, that's not true. It's actually purposefully better that a son not necessarily be the next rabbi, and so that everyone knows it's not based on an inheritance. It's earned by everyone. Rav Sheshat Bered Rav Idi Omer, Kedeh shelo yitgaderu al hasibur. Mozutra Omer, mipnei shehen mitgaberin al hasibur. The following two are similar, but there's an important difference between them. Rav Yosef says, Rav Sheshet says, it's so that they will not push themselves, make themselves higher, be presumptuous towards the community. In other words, if the sons say, oh, we're going to be the next rabbis here, we're the next ones, so then they'll put the community down, and they'll assume a higher status, lord it over people. And so everybody earn it. When you earn it yourself, then you appreciate what goes into becoming a leader better. When you just inherit leadership, then you are presumptuous about it, and it goes to your head. Mozutra said, no, it's actually because of the fathers, the sages themselves, because they lord it over the community. If they do, that's why their sons don't get to be sages, right? When it's similar to the next one. Rav Asher Omer, Mishum de karu le'inashe hamare. You know what the Torah scholars do? They look around, they call people donkeys because they're not so learned. So they make fun of them, call them donkeys. So what happens as a result of that? Their own sons are not Torah scholars. So then they'll have more compassion. They'll be more understanding. It's not easy for everyone to become a great Torah scholar. And so, if a rabbi lords it over the community, says, "Oh, see, I'm so great," and then his sons would also be Torah scholars. So see, I could do it, right? It belongs to us. It's inherited in my family. You're all chamorim, and so now we say no. A person's sons Torah scholars' sons are often not sages, to lower that person's ego and appreciate everybody on their level. Ravina Omer, she'en mevarchin Torah b'Torah techila. Ravina says a different reason how come Torah scholars' sons do not become Torah scholars themselves? Because those fathers do not bless the blessings of the Torah before beginning to study Torah. Tamar Rav Yehuda Marav, Mai dichtiv, mi ha'ish hachacham ve'yaben et zot, davar ze nishal chachamim ve'lenevi'im ve'lo pirshuhu. Pasuk in Yirmiyah that asks, who can understand this? By this they mean, we can see it in context, מי האיש החכם יבן זאת אשר דיבר פי השם אליו יגידה על מה אבדה הארץ ניסתה כמדבר מבלי עובר. Why is the land ruins and desolate? Well, what caused all this? And Hashem answers, Alos ba metorati, because the people forsook my Torah, and also they did not follow my words. So you see, it says two things, right? They left the Torah and they did not follow God's voice. But you notice that Hashem has to answer. So that's what the Midrash is on. So they asked Chachamim, the Nevi'im, they didn't know until only Hashem knew the answer, and this is the answer. We ask, how come Hashem said two things, that they forsook the Torah and they did not obey Hashem's voice? Isn't that the same thing? Isn't that the same thing as that they didn't follow the Torah? Right? It also says here, it's actually three things, and so isn't lishma bekolo? They left the Torah, they didn't listen to his voice, they didn't follow it, right? Isn't that the same thing? Now we answer, Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Shen mevarchin b'Torah techila. Forsaking the Torah, that means that they actually did study Torah. We're talking about the Torah scholars. Yes, they studied Torah, but without saying a blessing first. What does that mean? Does that mean literally that they didn't say Birkot Torah in the morning? Could be, it could be that they did say Birkot Torah in the morning, as Maharal explains, that they considered the Torah to be just an intellectual academic exercise and did not recognize its spiritual value. They weren't thanking Hashem for it, saying, this is Hashem's instruction, this is something that should affect me personally and increase my Yirat Shamayim, and so they were doing it in an egotistic manner. And that's why, even though they were Torah scholars, their sons do not become Torah scholars. Which would mean that if a person is sincere and full as Yirat Shamayim, is recognizing the spiritual value, not only the intellectual value of Torah, then that person's sons, children will be inspired and very well, hopefully, will be Torah scholars as well. Okay, isi bar Yodala ata lemetibta de Rabbi Yosef telata yomeh. Now back to the Biyoseh. Who we were talking about before, Isi Bar Yehuda, who was also a Tana, a next generation Tana, he did not come to the yeshiva of the Biyoseh for 3 days. Ashkache Vardimus B'Biyoseh. So the Biyoseh's son, Vardimus, interesting name, sounds like a pretty Greek name. Amar Le, we're just speaking about, right, sons of sages. We don't know much about him. Anyway, Amar Le, my tama la'ate mor lebe midrasha daba hava de'aba ha'atelata yomin. Well, anyway, this son of the Biyoseh certainly was in the Bet Midrash, so we'll speak well of him. And he was checking up on the students. And so Vardimos, the son of the Biyoseh, asked Isi, how come you didn't come to my father's Bet Midrash in 3 days? Where have you been? Amar Le, ki ta'ameh de'abuch layadane hecha atai. Isi said, I don't understand the reasoning of your father. So how can I come? I'm sitting there and I'm scratching my head. I have some questions. And until I answer those questions, I don't feel like I can come and learn the next thing. I'm still stuck on the thing he said 3 days ago. So Vadimos says, okay, tell me your question. Maybe I can give you the reason for it. It refers to that statement, which was at the end of the daf yesterday, that says that a laundry of one city is more important than the lives of the people in the other city, right? If my city, we have enough water for laundry, but you don't have enough water to drink, we get to keep our water so we can do our laundry, because laundry is more important than life itself. So I understand the concept, but what's the pasuk? Where does he learn it from? That's what I'm wondering, and I couldn't come back to the Bet Midrash until I answered that. And sure enough, Vardimos knows the answer. Look at that. Vardimos is a Tamid Chacham, the son of Rabbi Yosef. Okay, so that speaks very well of both of them. This is a pasuk that's talking about the cities of the Leviim. The Leviim do not get a share of the land of Israel as a shevet. However, they do get their cities, and around the cities they get some land for pasture. So the cities is where they would dwell. And the outskirts, that will be pasture for their cattle and for their beasts. So notice it says behemtam and chayatam. So this is the pasuk we're going to learn it from. How? What does it mean, chayatam? Is it talking about animals, right? Wild animals, non-domesticated? Well, that's included in behema. You just have to say behema. This is pasture for all of their livestock. You don't have to say, that could be included in behema. Ela mai chayatam, chayutam mamash. Pishita, but rather what does chayim mean? Literally, their lives, that they live in the land. Isn't that obvious? They got these cities so that they can live there, right? They can, whatever they need to do on that land, that's where they live. So you wouldn't have to say so that they live. Rather, it means that they get this land, this extra land, so that they can do their laundry there and put out their laundry. Why is that so important? Because otherwise, they'll get all dirty. And we saw the dangers of having dirty clothing, at least to disease and madness and terrible things. And so, how does the pasuk refer to laundry? Obviously, it's laundry. It refers to it as chayatam, their lives. And that's how we know that having clean clothing is as important as life. Right? It's essential to life. And that's the pasuk from which we can derive what Rabbi Yosef taught, that my laundry takes precedence over your life. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yosef, en lanu ela nidre inu nefesh. Okay, that ends the Agadah. And now we're going to go back to Rabbi Yosef, and who said that he doesn't think that not washing about your body is considered affliction. He rather only if it has to do with like not eating fruit. Question. Okay, we understand Rabbi Yosef that you think that not washing is not called affliction, so the husband cannot nullify his wife's vow as an affliction, le'anot nafesh, as the pasuk said. But what about the other category? Doesn't Rabbi Yosef agree that a husband can annul his wife's vows if they affect their relationship? Presumably, he does agree in general with that. And so would he agree that her not washing, even if it's not an affliction, I don't know, she doesn't feel like washing, but wouldn't that affect their relationship? Can't a husband say, hey, you stink, right? And I can't live with you like this, and therefore I'm going to annul your vow? Would Rabbi Yosef permit the husband to annul his wife's vow, although there would be a difference, because then it only if it affects him, whereas affliction, even if it doesn't affect him, will still be permitted. But so that's the question. Tashema. Amar Rabbi Yosef, en elu nidre inui nefesh, aval devarim shebeno lebena havyan. Oh, maybe we can learn it from the language of the Mishnah itself. Notice that when Rabbi Yosef was responding to Chachamim, he said, this not washing is not considered affliction. We can derive from that, infer from that it's not a problem of affliction, but it is a problem of matters of their relationship. So can we presume that that's what he meant to say? And therefore, yes, he can annul it? No, not necessarily. Maybe the Yosef was only saying that kind of phraseology because he was responding to the Rabbanan. Maybe the Yosef says, according to me, I don't think that washing is an affliction. I don't think it's even a matter of their neither. I don't think it's a matter of a problem of their relationship. I don't think so. The husband cannot. But according to you, because you say it is a problem of affliction, I think you should agree with me that it doesn't rise to the level of affliction. So therefore, the Yosef, when he says, I don't think that washing is affliction, it doesn't mean to imply that it is a problem of relationship. The rabbi said before that it's a problem of affliction. He said, no, I don't think it's a problem of affliction. I don't think it's a problem of relationship either. I don't think it's any problem. So we cannot derive an answer from the Mishnah. So what is the answer? According to the Yosef, can a husband annul his wife's vow who says she's not going to wash because that will affect their relationship? Okay, we're going to end up answering yes, that the Yosef says he can, but this is going to require a long proof. Rav Ada bar Hava omer, mefer. Rav Huna omer, en mefer. That is subject to a machloket. Rav Ada bar Hava says, yes, according to the Yosef, you can. Rav Huna says, no, he cannot. It's not affliction, and it does not affect their relationship. Right? Her not washing is her problem. She doesn't feel like washing. It's not his problem. Now, what's the reason for Rav Huna that would not be a problem, right? So doesn't it sound like it would be a problem? No. Shelemah sinu shoal shemet be'afar pir. We're using an analogy. We never find a fox who dies in the earth of its own lair. In other words, a fox, they are very good at digging, and they dig these holes in the ground, and they live there. Now, the dirt that's in there from just dirt and from whatever food and stuff that they produce that's in the lair. So it's going to be dirty in there. They're living there for a while. There's nobody there's no housekeeping. But the fox gets used to it, and he's fine with the natural dirt that is there, and it's not going to bother the fox. That's the analogy. The nimshal is that a man loves his wife, and even if she doesn't wash and she smells, that's her smell. He gets used to it. He likes her smell, and no one will not affect their relationship, and that's okay. All right, is that true? I don't know. But anyway, that is Rav Huna's opinion. Not bathing will not affect the husband and wife's relationship. All right, but now we're going to prove that Rav Ada bar Hava, we have a proof for him that yes, it will affect the relationship, and he can. Tanya kivated Rav Ada bar Hava, we have a braita on his side. Devarim sheyesh ben inui nefesh mefer. It's a long braita, but we're going to prove it at the end. Braita says that when there are matters of affliction, that she makes a vow that causes her affliction, the husband can annul it. And it doesn't matter whether it affects his relationship with his wife or her relationship with other people. He doesn't even have to be directly involved. He can look out for her overstepping in a fit of anger or passion, making a vow that will cause her affliction. The husband can undo it. But if there is no affliction, then he can only undo it if it will affect the relationship between the husband and wife, and not if it affects the relationship between the wife and other people. Kesad, what's an example? Amra, kunam perot alai, if she says I'm not going to have fruit, then he can undo it, because that's affliction. Konam she'eni oseh lo osa lefi abba, lefi achicha, lefi avicha, lefi achi, v'shelo eten tevet nifnei behemtecha, umayim lifnei bekarecha, en yachol lafer. The following things have nothing to do with affliction. They have to do with her relationship with others. She says, I am not going to do anything that will benefit the mouth of father. My father, her, meaning her father, or your brother, the husband's brother, or your father, meaning her father-in-law, or my brother. So she says, I'm not going to benefit all these people. I'm not cooking for them. I'm not giving them anything. Even though that will affect the relationship between her and her father or brother or father-in-law or brother-in-law, but that won't affect the husband's relationship. Now, it could very well be that the husband does indirectly benefit from, if she feeds her father-in-law, then the husband doesn't have to go and do it himself, because that's really his obligation of kibud av. So it's true, by her stopping to do that, that will may place a bigger burden on him to do it. Nevertheless, it's not directly about their relationship, so therefore he has no right to annul. Or if she says, I'm not giving food to your animals. Normally before that, she did as a favor. She helped out and fed his animals, or water for his cattle. She says, I'm not going to do that. He cannot nullify that vow, because it affects her relationship with others, not directly the husband and wife relationship. But if she says, Shelo echechol, v'shelo efkos, v'shelo eshamesh mitati, yafer, mishum devarim shebeno lebenam. But if she says, I'm not going to put on eyeshadow, I'm not going to put makeup on my cheeks, I'm not going to use the bed, meaning I'm not going to engage in marital relations with you, that directly affects their relationship. Right? You see, they're putting on makeup mostly for their husbands. And so by not doing that, that will affect, husband says, no, this is going to affect my relationship, this is no good, so that he can annul. Now, more examples. The Braita continues. Shelo asiya lecha mitatcha, v'shelo imzog lecha takos, v'shelo elchas lecha panecha, yadecha, v'raglecha, en tzarich lehafer. If she says, I'm not going to make your bed, and I'm not going to pour a cup, I'm not going to mix the wine and water for you and serve you wine, I'm not going to wash your face, hands, and feet. In that case, in that case, the husband does not even have to annul the vow. It doesn't take effect in the first place. As we saw back in Masechet Ketubot, there are certain basic things that a wife does for a husband. A lot of things a husband has to do for his wife also. He has to take care of her, take care of the finances, pay for everything. But these are basic matters of intimacy that show a wife's love, and she has to do these things: make the bed, serve him wine, and wash his hands and feet and face. And so these, because they are obligations within the ketubah, she already obligated herself. When she makes a vow against them, the vow does not even apply, and therefore the husband need not even annul them. Okay. Now, that was all a bunch of cases. Now we have Rabban Gamliel Omer, Yafer. Rabban Gamliel disagrees with the last case and says, even though the last set of vows does not take effect, nevertheless the husband should still nullify them. Why? Lo yachel devaro, because it said, the pasuk regarding nullifying vows says, he shall not profane his word. Now, his word, we're understanding here to mean a person's regular words, even though they don't make a vow. Nevertheless, someone should not profane them and violate a vow. Even if her, in this case, she says, I'm not going to make the bed, even though it doesn't turn into a vow, so it's just her plain old words, it's still not a good idea. It's not a good habit for people to go and be saying things that I'm not going to do this, and then they violate their word. Even if it's not a vow, it's not proper. Therefore, a husband should annul it, even though doesn't actually create a vow. So that's machlok. Davar acher. Once we quote this pasuk, we're going to quote another point of it, another thing we learned from it. Lo yachil devaro mikan lechacham shen matir nidre atzmo. Since it says he shall not profane his word, we learn from here that a person cannot undo his own vow. Even a chacham, even though he knows all the laws better than anybody else, and the chacham is dissolving everybody else's vows, lo yachil devaro, he cannot dissolve his own vow. The chacham will have to go to someone else, right? Like a barber can't give himself a haircut. Man shaminan de'amar. That was the whole baraita. Now we're going to finally get to the proof that Rabbi Yosef says, yes, a husband can annul the vows of a wife if they affect their relationship. Who is the author that would say, who teaches, Rabbi Yosef, who says that not putting on makeup is a matter that affects their relationships? That's only Rabbi Yosef. Remember, because Chachamim say that not adorning herself, which includes makeup, that was something of affliction. And since it was a matter of affliction, that then a husband can undo his wife's vow if she says, I'm not going to put on makeup, no matter what, even if it doesn't affect their relationship. That's the broader category. But in this baraita, it said as an example, what is an example of something that will affect their relationship? And it explains, then he can, because that is devarim shebeno lebena. So that clearly is not chachamim, it is only Rabbi Yosef. Now that we prove that this whole baraita is Rabbi Yosef, and yet the baraita says that the husband can annul a vow when she says, I'm not going to put on makeup. He can annul the vow, not because it's a problem of affliction, but rather because it's a problem of their relationship. And that therefore we supported Avada Barahavaz response that yes, he can annul it. Okay, good. So now that we proved that, we want to mention something in the Braita. Go back to it. Amar Mourad, said if she says, not going to use the bed, she refuses to have marital intimacy, then he can undo it because that is something that affects their relationship. We ask, what exact language does she use? If she says the benefit of being with me is prohibited to you, well then he doesn't need to annul it, because just like if she says, I'm not going to make the bed, I'm not going to serve you wine, she can't go against her own ketubah obligation. And so if she says it in that way, that she puts the obligation on the prohibition on him, you cannot benefit, he doesn't even have to undo it. But yet the Braita says that he undoes it. Ha mishubedet le, right? She is obligated to him. Ela be'omeret hana tashmishecha alai uchtarav kana. Rather, this clause of the Mishnah, when it says that when she refuses intimacy, he has to annul it, that's only if it's a case where she puts the prohibition upon herself. And she says the benefit of relations is prohibited to me. So because that vow does apply, because by the standards of the ketubah, she has to she's obligated to have relations with him, so she can't prohibit him. But she doesn't have to enjoy it. She doesn't have to benefit from it, so she can make a vow saying, I'm not going to benefit from it. So therefore, since she can't, that vow does apply because it's not directly against the ketubah, even though it will prevent them from having relations, which will end up being a problem. So it is something that causes a problem in their relationship, beno lebena, but it still does apply because it's not in direct contradiction to the ketubah. Therefore, the husband does have to annul it. And what did Rav Kana say? Rav Kana, hanatish mishcha alecha kofa sham mashto, hanatish mishcha la yafer, shen machilin et adam davar asur lo. This distinction between her exact language was already said by Rav Kana, that if she says the benefit of relations with me is prohibited to you, then that vow does not apply at all, and she is obligated, and he can call upon that obligation, and she has to have relations it says kofa, she forces him. I mean, not physically. There is kind of, the Talmud does have a concept of marital rape, but it will be grounds for divorce if she does it. But if she says the benefit is prohibited to me, then that vow does apply. Yet he should annul it because a person, you cannot feed a person something that he is prohibited to. If a person says, I prohibit myself from eating meat, then you can't feed the person meat because that would be causing them to violate a prohibition that they made, and that's why the husband must annul that vow. Okay. Man tana hadetanya davrim mutarim v'acherim nhagu behen isur יתה רשאי לנהוג בהם היתר כדי לבטלן, משום שנאמר לא יאכל דברו. Also, going back to something we've seen above about lo yachel devaro, and the Rabban Gamliel, we're going to ask, who is the author of this Baraita? The Baraita says that if there are things that are actually permitted, but there's some group of people that have a custom to be stringent about it, right? For whatever reason, they think it's prohibited, and so they're not doing it. Now you come to the person's house, right? Person he follows some kind of stringency, and you see them doing that, and you know it's really permitted. You should not tell them that it's permitted, right? Don't do it in a permitted way. And even though it's permitted, don't do that and tell them it's permitted and nullify their stringency. Why? Because it says, lo yachel devaro. Even if something is just devaro, it's his own word. It's not from the letter of the law. It's not necessary. Nevertheless, you shouldn't profane it because this is something that they're keeping. And if you tell them, don't do that, then they're going to say, oh, I've been doing this for years. What else? So maybe I don't have to do this and the next thing. And so, right, once they're keeping something, let them follow their stringency if they don't know better. That's one opinion. Davar acher. Now, the davar acher is not relevant to here. Just like before, we just bring it up because we happen to mention it. Lo yachel devaro mikana tamid chacham shemefer nidor le'atzmo. Once again, you cannot profane your own words, even if you're a great sage. You have to go to someone else. Okay, forget that. We're asking about the first one. Maneh. Who is the opinion that says even if something is not actually prohibited, nevertheless, you should not you should not violate, though. You should not tell them that they can violate. Who would agree with this? It's actually Rabban Gamliel. He is Rabban Gamliel because he said a similar concept before. The concept before was when a woman says, I'm not going to make the bed serve you wine, even though that does not create a prohibition. So there is no prohibition. Nevertheless, the husband should annul those words so that the person does not profane something that they said, even though it's not a vow. Even saying something, you should not profane it without nullification, and so therefore nullify it, and that's why that way they're not profaning those words. That's a similar concept to people who are doing astringency, even though it's not the letter of the law and they don't have to, but a person should not profane even their own words, even their own stringency. And therefore, without some kind of process of maybe hatara, because they're used to doing that, you should not simply profane a word that someone takes upon himself. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.